Okay. A couple of good books here that deal with this in the bibliography. Of course, Carson you already know about, and that's part of the problem there, is make sure we don't make those kind of mistakes. Okay. But Hirsch, still a very popular and a very well received book, still one of the best that has to do with validating interpretations. Okay. So you want to look at that one. And I've put down here as one guide for us is the Lionel Ruby's book, Art of Making Sense, or Logical Thinking Guide. And that was a good one. It's easy to work with. It may not even be in print anymore. I don't know. The library would have it. But I kind of use that one on the next page when we go through the process. I used his outline, which was very easy to follow. Okay, in the evaluation. I also mentioned Sidney Greidanus up here, Modern Preacher in the Ancient Text. He's got some good key statements that I've listed here. Here's one of the things: asking the right questions. That's the name of that heading of his book. Of course, interpreters understand texts only by asking questions and receiving answers. Asking the right questions is of crucial importance, for asking the wrong questions will undoubtedly result in receiving wrong answers. One of the weighty issues in hermeneutics is therefore how to ask the right questions. Okay? At the very end of this, on page 85, in bold print I write, in keeping with that, exegetical proficiency is largely determined by the ability to ask the right questions and the determination to find answers to those questions. Okay? And already, when we looked at some passages, some issues already, in the book of Philippians, we said, well, this raises questions. Why is there no article here? Why is there no conjunctions here? You see? What does this mean, the out-resurrection? Is he unsure of his salvation, or what are we talking about here? I'd say there's questions that need to be raised, and to ignore those is to just simply be ignoring the texts that they're at, the text itself, which is raising the questions, and therefore inviting you to get some answers. And if you look at the text carefully enough, it'll raise the question basically for you, and you can figure out what area where the problem lies. What area does it lie? For instance, in our problem in 3:11, one of the first things that arises was, this is a hapax ergomenon. This only occurred one time. What does this word mean? That's clearly one of the questions, right? Secondly, they may raise the question, well, okay, where in the context do I have any help, if any, right? And what kind of help am I looking for? Well, what I'm looking for is an explanation of the term that doesn't use, obviously it won't because it can, only one-time reference, but talks about the same topic but uses different words. That's what I want. If you would ask me a question, what do you mean by that word, hapax ergomenon? Well, I'm going to say, hapax ergomenon. That isn't helping you at all. Okay, right? And I say, it means the term only used one time. Now we got it. You're saying the same thing using different words. See, right? That's really the most helpful kind of parallel that we often find in these difficulties. Tell me again, different words. That's why I'm kind of a junkie when it comes to grammars. I like to have a lot of grammars and stuff. Why? Because one grammar won't communicate something to me very well. So what is he talking about? I go to another one talking about the same topic, using different way of looking at it, different words, and I say, I got it. And I can go back, I can see this guy. Well, too bad he can't speak English, but I know what he's talking about now. See? Same thing is the issue here. So, here it's a pretty simple concept, but it's not easy. We already discussed, I think, if you discovered it's not easy. What is it that I don't understand? What do I need to do to come to a better understanding? First question, what is it I don't understand? May take some effort just to think that through. What is it about this that bugs me here that I'm not sure I got a hold of? And then once I get that answered, what do I need to do to solve this issue to come to a better understanding? Okay. And I got a few other suggestions, but let's look at the thing on the page, the outline on page 84. You just think of it from the standpoint of the argument, not the argument, but the discussion we had earlier. And now go to your homework. If you had an issue, maybe all you got different interpretations of the word salvation as we found it in 2:12. Interesting to see what interpretations you came up with. Okay, but then we'll look at it from the standpoint of, okay, let's pick one of yours and let's see if we can validate that somehow. Okay, but let's just think in terms, just to walk through this outline here of what we discussed earlier. The situation generates inquiry, or what is it that we feel uneasy about when we read Philippians 3:11? If somehow, writes the Apostle Paul, who we expect is going to go to heaven someday, if somehow I can attain unto the resurrection of the dead. Gee whiz, if he wasn't sure, where am I? No, so what is it that is posing me a problem here? Okay, well, there's a couple of things on the surface that we could say. So we're trying to precisely formulate the problem here. One of them could be, what does he mean by if somehow? What is the force of that? Do we have it translated right? Is that really what it means? Is it that fuzzy? What does this resurrection word mean? Another one. So at least two things I know that we can already formulate because I got questions about it. One of them is, what is apos? What's the force of that? Okay. And could it possibly be, here's another question that arises from examining what we said before, the New American Standard, that just replaces the apos with what we would have to say as a hina. Right? Is it possible that apos can function the same way as a hina? That's a question, right? So where am I going to go with that? Well, I'm going to go to grammars, large grammars, to see if, in fact, there is a crossover there at all, you see. It's one place I'm going to go. To solve that kind of grammatical problem. And then, of course, I'm going to go to my lexicons and do the work I need to do for the word study on that word resurrection there. So at least I've got some formulation of some of the problems that are raised by this text. Okay. Observation of the relevant issues and facts. Well, it's right here. Meditation on this text will kind of elucidate the facts. You want to know all the facts. Okay. Some problems we find because we don't see all the facts, right? And so we have a problem, but it's only a problem because we've limited ourselves in some way from all the data that exists here, you see. That could possibly be here. For instance, if I ignore the facts that would underlie the grammatical problem with apos here somehow. Well, if I ignore that, then there's some data that I don't have to work with. And I may never solve my problem here. Okay. So we need to be able to observe all the relevant facts. Okay. For instance, just relevant facts. Is it relevant? Question. Is it relevant that he uses resurrection in verse 10, but a different word for resurrection in verse 11? See, is that relevant to the thing? Okay. Is it relevant, for instance, that in the following passage he seems to equating receiving and not receiving this resurrection with somehow this concept of perfection? Right? Is there any relevance to the fact that the verse 14 has the adverb up, which seems to imply something of that strange word I'm working with before, a resurrection concept? So see all the relevant facts. Okay. Observation, clear. Use of previous knowledge. Question we ask. Well, do we know of any place where Paul talked like this before? That's previous knowledge, you see, right? Or have we ever seen the verbal form of exegesis? That's previous knowledge, and we have. We've seen it in the New Testament, we've seen it in the Septuagint, so those relevant facts. Okay. Another relevant fact, maybe at the theological level, Was Paul sure of his salvation? Is there places where Paul seems to be sure that he's going to heaven as opposed to wondering if he's going to make it? Right? That's a question. See, that could be dealt with. Okay? Anything that would be relevant to the topic may be in our background or something that we could use to bring together, all this together. And then once you get what you got, the facts, any relevant data that comes from other sources that you're able to dig up, then you need to formulate a hypothesis. And that's what it is, a hypothesis. It hasn't been proven. It's just a theory. What hypothesis can come into play that will pull these facts together into a consistent and harmonious whole, seemingly? Right? Which doesn't ignore the data that I found, right? Takes it into account. So there's none of that, what Carson calls kind of selective use of information. You know, I'm only going to use the stuff that goes along with my theory. See, right? So being careful not to do those kinds of things. And then we formulate a hypothesis that we need to test. But the key there is to formulate a hypothesis. Okay? Then the deductions from the hypothesis say, if this hypothesis is true, then certain consequences could be predicted. Right? This is Ruby's statement that I'm working from right now. The working out of the implications of the hypothesis tell us what facts will verify or confirm the hypothesis. So we kind of ask the question, well, if my interpretation is true, okay, then that implies that Paul believed that perfection, though not probable, it's got to be possible at the theological level. Well, that could be tested, perhaps, right? In various ways. Anyway, deduction. What does that imply? Because you see, if we've got a statement of truth, the implications have got to be valid, right? You can't have an implication, a clear implication drawn from a statement that is clearly in contradiction to the statement. It can't be done. It can't work. There is no cohesion there, you see. Okay. So then you test it by further observation, experiment, whatever it takes to do to verify your hypothesis. Then you come to your conclusion. And sometimes your conclusion of your hypothesis, though you can verify it to some level, let's keep in mind that maybe there are just some facts out there that you don't know. Maybe there's some historical data that you've never uncovered, right? Maybe it's just some passage of Scripture you've never been able to include because you couldn't remember it and nobody pointed you to it. That maybe deals with that, right? So if it's a really sticky wicket, like the one we're dealing with here, we were talking about, maybe, yes, we're going to come to a conclusion. But let's not be so dogmatic that we say, and this is the only possible conclusion that it could be. Right? That's not intellectual honesty, unless we have universal knowledge of everything that could possibly impinge upon it, and who's going to claim that? I'm not. Some truths, Scripture, we're going to be absolutely dogmatic without question. Jesus Christ is God Himself. Right? I'm going to hold that line as dogmatic as I can possibly be to my dying day. Even if there's something uncovered in the text that could potentially be interpreted opposing that, there's enough in the text for me to say at that point, okay, I don't understand that. But the other stuff I do understand, and I'm going to go over that. Right? Other things are not quite as clear. Pre-tribulation rapture, mid-tribulation rapture, pre-rapture, post-tribulation rapture, partial rapture, no rapture, There are good people who believe all those things. Right? And is that because, what the reason for that? The reason for that is because the data isn't so clear that it locks out all other views. See what I'm saying? And therefore, we ought to be a little more diplomatic and say, okay, let's just hope and pray that God doesn't hold us to our view when the rapture time comes and I go and you stay. Let's hope He doesn't hold that view. You want to believe you're going through the tribulation? You can go. I don't want to believe I'm going. Right? Now, let's just be careful in our dogmatism, I say, on some things like this. Now, let's see how dogmatic you can be on your... let's do one other thing before we do that. Looking at what Hurst got to say, invalidation. I think this is very important. It's on page 85. To establish a reading, which he means by reading is an interpretation, as probable, it is first necessary to show, with reference to the normal to language, that it's possible. In other words, the language leads to this as a possibility. This is a criteria of legitimacy. I mean, the language has got to be legitimate. Let's just take the example of the New American Standard, who seemingly took a post and turned it into henna. Is that legitimate? That's the issue of legitimacy. Okay. The reading must be permissible within the public norms of the language in which the text was composed. In other words, the public Koine Greek, people who read and speak Koine Greek in that day, listen to, would understand that that's a possibility. Okay, that for the language. Okay. The second criterion is that of correspondence. The reading must account for each linguistic component in the text. It has to take account of everything. You just can't eliminate certain things. You got to take account of everything. That's there. That's the data, all the data. Right? And whenever a reading arbitrarily ignores some component or inadvertently inadequately accounts for the reading may be presumed improbable. Okay. Now, a lot of times the interpreter is not just simply ignoring things, it's just not seeing things, it's not seeing data. How many interpreters don't see something that is not in the text? And something in this language that is not in the text becomes positive data. You can leave any time.
No, it's great. No, it's great. Makes sense.
For instance, the article, right? That's positive data and it's not there. Okay. So anyway, sometimes you're just not seeing it. Not just, it's there, but I can't explain it, so let's forget it. It's not that. Oftentimes. The third criteria is generic appropriateness. No, he said if the text follows the conventions of a scientific essay, it is inappropriate to construe the kind of lucid meaning found in casual conversation. In other words, technical terminology. Okay, I mean, you don't take a technical term and use it in a different context and transfer the technical terminology into that context, right? You know what I'm saying? And it wouldn't be understood. Okay, so it's got to be appropriate for the generic context, that is the kind of literature we're talking about here. Okay? And then when these three preliminary criteria have been satisfied, there remains the fourth, which really gives significance to all the rest, and it's plausibility or coherence. Okay? The three norms usually permit several possibilities, right? Otherwise, it wouldn't be a problematic text, probably. Faced with the alternative, so you choose a reading which best meets the criterion of coherence. And what does the coherence mean? Well, essentially what that means is that it takes all the facts and all the data, and they can all come to a conclusion that is, they're all used and they all fit the hypothesis. You see what I'm saying? Okay. So if you have to eliminate one or two to make it work, then the probability is that the right interpretation is wrong. And once all the data and all the facts seem to fit, that's what he means here then. Since the text is not, even if the text is not probably, coherence remains a decisive criterion since the meaning is obvious only because it makes sense. That is, all the data comes together and it makes sense. You see? If you have to eliminate data or don't see data, then you got problems here. Okay? So that's interesting, helpful. And also I like to use, and I frequently do this in my own thinking, through some of these problematic texts. Occam's razor, I've got the law of parsimony down here. Principle in philosophy and science that assumptions introduced to explain a thing must not be multiplied beyond necessity, and hence the simplest of several hypotheses is always the best in accounting for unexplained facts. That means this, simply. Okay, look. If I have to add 3 hypotheses to undergird my primary hypothesis, 3 assumptions, let's say, to undergird my hypothesis. Now, all these 3 things got to be true for the hypothesis to be true. Okay? And then I have another possibility of interpretation where I only have to introduce 2 underlying assumptions for my hypothesis to be true. The probabilities are, you see, because the writer wants to be understood, right? Okay, the probabilities are that the one that only requires 2 underlying hypotheses is going to be more closer to the truth than the one that takes 3 or 4 or 5, you see, right? So the simplest becomes more obvious, more logical. Because, in fact, the writers need to understand that to mean they're writing to be understood. They're not writing to confuse, right? So they want to be understood. Okay? So that we need to apply that, I think, too, on occasion. Okay? Now, there may be some times when there are understanding that the writer and the reader have that doesn't need to be communicated, so they're underlying. You see what I'm saying? And so, but we may not be aware of those. So we add 2 or 3 hypotheses just to kind of make it work. But in fact, there may be, those that we add may in fact already be understood by the people they only need to express it. Okay, it's not so much in the New Testament. Certainly a lot of that occurs in the Old Testament. I'm sure a lot of it in the New, I could point out the specific things. But in the Old Testament, for instance, there's a lot of times when the prophets are given there and they're screaming out their judgments here and there and the other place, and underlying it all, which is understood by both prophet and people, is the whole concept of covenant, which is not laid out because it's understood, you know. Okay? So that underlies it, you see, a lot of times. But at any rate, that's what we're talking about here. Now let's look at your conclusions, interpretations of salvation, to see if there's any Arminians in the... No, just kidding. Okay. Work out your own salvation here. Our question or the issue was a matter of, we know what the word salvation means, okay? But it can mean different things. I mean, different dimensions of that. The question is, what does it mean here? Okay, so let's somebody throw out your conclusion here, and then we'll run that through down our list of validation and see how that works out. You have one there? You have a conclusion? Anybody brave person here? I'll be reading them all anyway. So, what did you conclude when you did work? It means what? What do you mean by salvation?
Well, it can mean deliverance, or it can either focus on a physical aspect. Like for Paul, I mean, he may have had pending death in mind or something.
Okay, now, when I ask what's your conclusion, I'm not saying it could mean this. Let's just put it in the frame of a hypothesis so we can work with it. Whether or not you agree with it right now, what are you saying? Okay, he means his salvation is physical deliverance from death. So he's saying then to the people, work out your own physical deliverance from death. Right? Okay, if that was a hypothesis, okay, then the situation that generates inquiry actually it may generate a lot of things that are unrelated to the text in some ways, I suppose.
Well, deliverance from the hand of Irrelevant, maybe that way.
Yeah, well, okay, yeah, right, okay. So there's a question about what it means. That's already the situation. So we've come to a hypothesis. We've walked through it. Now, the problem is we know what salvation means. We don't know what aspect of salvation is involved here. We know it means deliverance. It could be spiritual, physical, temporal, eternal, all of those kinds of things, right? Okay, so that's the formulation of the problem here, okay? Observe the facts. What are the relevant facts? Okay, well, relevant facts, some of the relevant facts are what do you see? Any facts here?
Well,
Anybody can answer.
I would think that salvation makes itself known either in the present. The fact is that you can be presently saved, or that.
Well, no, that's not. I'm looking at the relevant facts that draw out of the text itself here. Okay.
He's addressing his brothers.
Okay, he's addressing Christians, presumably. Okay. It's framed within the context of a command, so it's apparently something that they should be able to do, right? Okay, so that's one of the relevant facts. What's some other relevant facts there?
The involvement of verses 13 and 14 of God, and his involvement in the process.
Okay, so on one hand, something they can do, but on the other hand, God is involved in the process. Okay, that's a relevant fact. Okay. Anything else? How about the very fact that there's a definite article with it? That's a relevant fact. Why would that potentially be relevant?
Focus the meaning that we're going to get, what we talked about earlier, as opposed to focusing on the wider aspect of salvation. It's going to narrow it.
Okay, and they make it more concrete rather than keep it less or generic, if you will, right? Okay, but just from the standpoint of last course you had in syntax, one of the functions of an article is previous reference, right?
Yeah, he's used it twice so far.
Okay, where is the last time you used it? That would be a relevant fact. Because if it's previous reference, which is very common in articles, right? Where is the last time he used it?
119.
Huh?
119.
119. Okay, and then the issue is this: if you understand what previous reference means, it means I'm taking a previously stated concept and I'm dragging it into my new context. Unless there's something in my new context that tells me that he specifically indicated that he doesn't have the same sense in this context as he had in the other context.
Yeah, in 119 he does say, my salvation.
Right.
And here he says, your own salvation.
Okay.
And I wondered if he was not referring to the same aspect of salvation, but in one case it was his, and now in this case it's theirs.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
He uses salvation one other time in the book, doesn't he?
Right now, not.
Not previously. Maybe not. I'm trying to remember. Well, previous reference would refer to a previous use. Yeah. If that's what it is. Okay.
In 28.
128. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's good.
That's
Yeah.
what I was thinking.
There is another one. Yeah. Where is that? 128.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Your salvation, which is not being terrified anything by adversaries, which is a token for them of destruction, but of your salvation.
For that, so that means deliverance, maybe more enemies.
Well, I mean, here's what you have to do now at this point. If you're going to say, well, one of the relevant facts could be that this is previous reference article. Okay. So then have to go back to the previous reference. Interpret it. I know this could be a process. I have to interpret that and determine what it means there if I'm going to potentially drag it into this context. Right? See what I'm saying? Okay? That's what you'd have to do. Okay? That's part of the relevant facts. Let's move on from that. Previous knowledge. What would there be of previous knowledge that would play into this that you might use?
When you start talking about previous knowledge, do you start from the inside and go further out, or how do you decide where to go?
Anything that impinges upon the topic, the issue. For instance, here's an example of previous knowledge. We know that the Apostle Paul used salvation in some instances as saved from the fiery pit of hell. Okay. We know that the Apostle Paul used the word salvation sometimes for being in heaven. Right? We also know that he used it in the sense of a sanctifying experience, saved in the present from the power of sin, right? I mean, that's previous experience based upon studies of Pauline help. Okay, so we know that he has used it in different ways, in at least these three ways. Has he ever used it as a purely and simply a physical deliverance from a dilemma? That's a question that might be great to see.
Well, there is something else we know about the spiritual aspect.
Yeah.
So he makes it pretty clear that justification is not something you can work for.
Okay, right, okay. There's another element, and that's where the theology side, saying, well, Pauline theology would seem to indicate that he can't mean here work for your own spiritual salvation. Right? Okay. So what we're doing is we're taking all the things that seem to impinge upon the problem here and trying to bring them together here. Okay?
Can we also bring up what he says further about the resurrection? I mean, if we are understanding the resurrection to be in the more complete sense, spiritual and physical, then this working out or working towards something that he has just discussed the ability to be attained, or that he is striving for.
Well, okay, now if I'm following you correctly here, number one, you're talking about information that comes later in the book. Would the readers or hearers make that connection as he's at this point in his sermon?
But we're talking about previous knowledge, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, previous.
So can we go ahead?
Well, yeah, you
Use
can.
previous knowledge?
You can, but then you have to.
Resources.
Right, but then you can't eliminate the historical or the very fact that the process of his reading it, they would not have that knowledge. The hearers would not have it at this point.
Sure.
Okay.
But we don't know how much knowledge you have from his
Right.
letter to Ephesians.
Right. We don't know what they have. We're stuck with what he's written at this point.
So it's something we can consider, but it's not.
Yeah.
We can't give it too much weight.
Well, you see, you could consider that at a later time. Let's say your hypothesis was such that it included that idea, some of that ideas, right? Okay, that in itself becomes a hypothesis that needs to be validated. See if you can validate that later stuff somewhere in this context here. Okay? You have to do that. Okay, so we've got previous knowledge, we got a lot of thoughts. Formulate a hypothesis, explanatory hypothesis, meaning it explains all that stuff and it coheres, holds together. What's a hypothesis can do that? Well, one thing I've heard is that Pauline theology doesn't believe you can save yourself from hell. Right? So it can't mean initial salvation in that sense, apparently. At least it would, presumably so, right? There's nothing that we can do. We can save ourselves from the present experience by committing suicide and going to heaven. Okay, that's the only way we can get the final salvation idea. And is that what he's saying? Go commit suicide and go to heaven? That doesn't sound exactly like what he would be saying here, right? It does make some sense to say, well, what this means is work out your own salvation with God's help, context, again, somebody mentioned that, okay, wherein you are delivering yourself, in the process of delivering yourself from those sins that have been keeping you from being perfect, and sanctified, if you will. So there's a possibility. The hypothesis that says, well, deliver yourself from the possibility of physical danger. Well, then the historical question comes to mind, are they in any physical danger that we know of, where they need to be delivered here, you see? Historically, maybe I can't validate that, you see. So at any rate, what we're doing is got a hypothesis, so make the hypothesis. Well, let's say he's talking about the sanctifying aspect of salvation as a hypothesis. Okay, so then what would be the deductions from that, if that was a hypothesis? That would be true. What would be the deductions that would grow out of that concept of salvation means present sanctification? Well, one of the deductions seeming to be is already in the text and elsewhere, and that is it involves our effort. It's one of the things, right? What's another one? Obedience, that certainly involves our effort. And obedience is in the context, isn't it? Okay, what's another one?
God has to be involved in it.
Okay, God has to be involved in it, because we can't do it on our own either, right? Another implication would be, not even in this context, but maybe it becomes a necessary equivalent. How does God get involved in this in our lives? Well, He does it through the Holy Spirit. So, is there an aspect wherein the Holy Spirit becomes a key element in the ability to save yourself in a sense? And that had to be maybe tracked down to see if that's right.
In 12, when he says, not as only in my presence, can we assume that they were doing this at one time? Or they were when he was there?
Obedient, yeah, they were always, according to what he says, as you have always obeyed, not only when I was there, but now when I'm gone, you obey. So they're apparently pretty good people. All right, pretty obedient people. Okay. Now, there's some aspect that maybe we need to track down further. One of the implications of this is, why does he have to give a command to do this if they're already perfect, so to speak? Right? Well, so is there anything in our context here that suggests a reason that could be for the very fact of a command here? Well, do all things without grumbling and disputing. Maybe there's a little bit of a grumbling going on, and that's part of it then, maybe.
Well, even, earlier in the chapter, when he talks about do nothing from selfish conceit or ambition or don't think about yourself, think about other people.
Right, yeah.
Obviously, there's something there.
Right.
They're not perfect yet.
And so that's a fact of the text that could sustain the fact that this is a command, and there's got to be a reason for the command. You don't command somebody to do something that they don't have a problem with. There's no real focus for that. Okay, so that works, right? That's one of the implications that would grow out of the fact that it's a command. There's got to be a reason for it. Okay, so that's a deduction that could work. Further experiment, observation. We could go then into aspects of other theological, in this case it's primarily a theological problem, right? Go into other theological dimensions to see if there is in fact a contradiction somewhere within Pauline theology that would make this hypothesis not as smooth as we would like it to be. Right? And if there isn't, well, then we can come to our conclusion, you see, that it's probably confirmed that we're talking here about a sanctifying element of salvation and not final or initial salvation, and not salvation or deliverance from some physical dilemma here. Then, however, we've got to go back again, and this is going to be part of our confirmation or validation process. See, all the data has got to cohere. And one of the pieces of data that's got to cohere is the fact that this has a definite article, and what kind of a definite article is it? In other words, is it, in fact, previous reference? If it's, in fact, previous reference, then I need to go back. Let's take my hypothesis with me. Now let's go back and see, then, if it works with the previous use of this term. Okay? Follow me? And so that's another aspect when we're trying to get all that data to cohere, to hold together. Okay? So is there any way that interpretation can fit in verse 28? And don't be terrified in any manner by your adversaries, which is for them a token of destruction. What we have to ask ourselves, what is the token here? It's not instantly clear, perhaps. Okay? The fact that they are being adversaries, they're contrary to your belief as a Christian, therefore that's to them a token of the fact that they are in a lost state. But then we have to assume that it's also a token, something is a token of your salvation or saved state. Right? So we've got to ask the question. And this, notice, the neuter there, it's not referring back to salvation proper, because it's a neuter and it doesn't have the same gender, right? This matter, okay, this whole thing, this concept that we're dealing with is from God. In fact, both of those sides are from God, apparently. Hello, yes, God calling.
The upward call for Stacy.
Paul was going to let us know what he meant by this.
Yeah, that would really make it work.
Yeah, that would be good.
Well, no offense, I haven't.
So at any rate, that's just another element. That's just another aspect, okay, of
You said you want to look at his previous reference to it, right?
yeah, previous reference.
128 is one of them.
128 is one, and then 119 is another. Okay.
Yeah, I was considering 119 too, in light of this. And if my hypothesis is correct there, that he wasn't just talking about physical deliverance, the concept that what he said, this would happen through your prayer and the supply of the Spirit. This concept of us doing something and the Holy Spirit of God working would lend its support to the concept of sanctification, salvation.
But that other use of the word salvation kind of sandwiched between these other two.
Right.
So then you simply ask the question, well, in this context then, in 128, what are we talking about with salvation? And there are some facts there that you need to perhaps deal with to see if it's going to validate. That is, one of the facts is that neither salvation or ruin or destruction there have an article. So it's generalizing it. It's characterizing it in a rather general sense, right? So maybe the concept there is a token of destruction, a token of salvation is a statement that talks about one's in a state of lostness and others in a state of savedness, which would not contradict salvation as is found in 120 or 19 and following it on. I mean, that could fit being so general in that sense. Okay, so at any rate, the process, I'm just interested in it primarily in our process here. And that's how you work. That's how it works. You have to ask the questions. You have to challenge the question, your own views, okay? And then test, hypothesize, slash your wrist if it doesn't work out. Change your religion. No. Throw your Greek New Testament away and read an English Bible. You don't have these problems facing you.
Somebody already did that for me. The Quran's pretty straightforward. Quran's pretty straightforward, I guess.
Which?
The Quran.
Quran?
The Quran.
Oh, the Quran. I thought you were talking about the message. Isn't that the same category?
Love it, love
I
it.
don't know, I don't think the message is even in that category. Keep it straightforward, right?
All right, I'm on page 86 here. We got a few other things to do. We got page 86, and I'm not going to go through this whole thing on Philippians 4:11. It deals with some of the. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this whole section, 4:11 to 13, at a later next time we meet. One of the things we want to do is take a passage and work it just like we were working the integrated process. Ask all the questions, search for all the answers, do all the textual things that may show up, to integrate the process here, okay? And so I'm going to use that text. That's one of them that I'll use next time. I might also use another one in chapter 4, the earlier part, where Euodius and Syntyche seem to have a little fireworks going there. So we will talk about that at a later time. However, the emphasis here is, look, there's all kinds of questions that arise in the text. In this one, a lot of them arise. And we need to then figure out what it means by working all the details, establishing a working hypothesis, validating the hypothesis, going through the whole thing. Okay? We're going to do that next time. Any questions on this questions and validation process that you want to raise?
Well, some of this seems to be important to look at the beginning. I mean, we've already done it. We're feeding off of each other, I guess, but going through this asking the interpretive questions, doesn't that even sort of come towards the beginning after you've done your initial reading and you want to start saying, well, why is this here, why is this there?
Well, this is one of the frequent steps. It's like textual criticism, word study, whatever. So the process works like this. We're going through our universal or our foundational steps. I'm doing my term analysis. I'm doing it right. As I'm working through the details of the text, that's when these problems are arising. I stop the process, to deal with the problems here, right? You see what I'm saying? So it may well come very early. And then again, it may come like this. It may be, I got all the data, I've put everything I could together, I still can't quite get it yet. Maybe it's because I haven't gone yet far enough. You see what I'm saying? And so you just kind of set it on the shelf mentally and you work ahead to see if in fact as you're working through the head, working through all the principles and whatnot, that it begins to clarify itself. And very often it works that way. You see what I'm saying? And so then you go back and say, oh, I see where this is going. I see this could be a possible connection. I could, that becomes further data that you can apply and later, and then maybe towards the end of that section or whatever, you're able to come to a conclusion.
Now, if you're teaching through like Philippians or something, is it necessary to do your full exegetical process of the whole book, before you even begin to start your teaching? I mean, you have to go through. I mean, it seems like that would be the ultimate. Good would come out of doing it.
We're looking at the difference between what's the ideal scenario and what's the real world scenario, right, Joe?
Exactly.
Yeah. Here's the ideal scenario. You exegete the whole book fully, and then you go back at some later date. Then you can preach. You can preach your messages and have it all together, etc., right? Okay. That can work. If you have the time and you have I guess it's mostly the time to be able to say, for instance, I want to preach through the book of Philippians. I need to do my exegesis on that. That's going to be down the line, let's say a year down the line. So I'm going to be working on that while I also have to do this other stuff. Okay, then after a year down the line, okay, I'm not going to start Philippians preaching, let's say, or teaching it. But then 2 years down the line, I want to do Romans, so I'm going to start working Romans. That's the ideal, and it means you got a lot of time on your hands. not too many people die off, so you don't have to go to, constantly running to the mortuaries and having services and counseling people with their marriage problems. Or you got a big staff where you can have them do all that work and you can just sit around exegeting. Not a very common situation. The other, scenario is that and there's a section at the end of today here that talks about adapting the method. Okay, adapting it. Okay. So there's another scenario, maybe very often becomes the more practical one, where you don't have time to do that at all. Okay? You have to jump into the middle of something, right? Or you're working through a book, but you don't have time to do it all first. Okay? So you have to, in some ways, you just have to keep an open mind to say, number one, later on, 3 weeks down the line when I do this next passage, I might find out that I've kind of skewed the first message a little way. Well, the one thing you need to guard from is the, self-condemnation and wrist slashing that could happen. You see, I led the people astray. That's not going to, even if you did the whole book, but later on, 3 years later, after some more experience, you would go back and look at that, and I've done that. I looked at how in the world did I ever conclude that? You just adjust, right? So then you just begin to adjust and recognize that I believe the truth of the matter is that, the Holy Spirit will apply things to people's lives that are true, valid, and I just got to believe I've done my best I can in good conscience, and the Lord is going to use it, and He's going to protect the people from any errors that I might have thrown their way out of ignorance or whatever. They just got to trust the Lord somewhere along the line. Actually, whose job is it anyway to sanctify people?
Well, we've also seen the importance of being able just to read the text.
That's right.
And get into it and actually hear it and all that. For folks like us who are really just beginning, Dr. Stanley said it takes about 5 years to really get a good grasp of the language. Putting our effort into really becoming conversant with the Scriptures, is that more important for us beginners than it is to actually try to piecemeal all this stuff together and then make it work?
Yeah. Well, it's all important. Okay? But do this, just say, okay, I'm going to forget these notes now. For the next 5 years, I'm just going to learn to read the text. Okay, fine. 5 years later, you're going to come back and you're going to have a refresher somewhere on what is this? How do you do this again? What's going on here? I really think that's not probably the model that you want to use. It's kind of like people who say, gee, I didn't have time to read New Testament in my first church. They having me do all these strange things, from making bulletins to counseling to preaching and teaching and visiting the elderly and whatever. And 2 years down the line, I'm going to be able to get a helper in here, and then I'll really be able to give myself to it. Well, 2 years later, they found out that they had lost the basics to the point where they got to do an awful lot more just to get up to speed where they were before. And they give up. They're not going to do it. Bottom line. So they'll just rationalize the whole thing away and preach from King James for the rest of their life and be able to fell out ahead and into my hands. That's it. Just kidding.
Okay. It only takes a lot of wisdom.
Yeah, now I would say this, that the ability to read, as I said, the most important thing for the exegete. Okay, the ability to read. As that ability increases, a number of things are going to happen. The ability to clearly see where the text is going without even necessarily asking all those questions and dealing with all those issues will become more evident, and you won't fall into traps. Okay? So as that ability increases, your interpretive ability increases even without doing all the word studies and everything. It's just natural. Okay? And so that's exceedingly important, I would say. Okay, and then, as we're going to see in the adaptation side, there is a way to keep the whole system in play, even in the constraints of a busy first church ministry or a later church ministry, if that may be. There's a way to do it so that I can grow in my ability to exegete at the same time as I'm ministering. We'll talk about how to do that. Okay. Well, at any rate, let's look at the other way to exegete. Commentaries, page 87. Okay, commentaries. Let's talk about those. Not too much length here. Now, of course, they're very valuable. There's people smarter than you and me and release more knowledge than you and me in some areas, and they've written them in books. And there's no way in which we can just completely eliminate everybody else's thinking and say, I'm going to figure out all this stuff for myself. We can't even we don't even do that with a dictionary. I mean, you've got to trust somebody somewhere along the line. You do it with dictionaries, with concordances, and, we do it to some degree with commentaries. Okay? There's a couple of errors involved here that I mentioned. There may be a lot more than these, but these are two of them that I have heard over and over again. One, the sum total of commentaries expresses the sum total of biblical interpretation. So all I need to do is get more and more commentaries, and all the interpretations are there. I just got to kind of figure out which one I like the best, Well, that's kind of a fallacy. Number one, the fallacy is that how do you know that all the interpretations are in all these commentaries? And why are new commentaries being written? Right? If all the interpretations are already there. Why doesn't somebody just summarize them for us all? And why waste our time digging out new data and new facts, the Dead Sea Scrolls or other Greek literature? Why waste our time with that if all the interpretations are already there somewhere? The reality is that isn't true. Okay? And there are new interpretations coming through, can come through. I may have thrown a few out that you may consider new and novel interpretations already this year. I don't know. Okay.
Well, at least we now know Silas wrote Hebrew.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's right. Study that through.
Is that going to be in the final?
Yeah.
Is that going to be on the final?
No.
That Silas wrote Hebrews.
On the heavenly final.
Oh. You meet Silas, you want to be able to say, nice book.
Yeah, that's right. Then the second error is because these people have got to be smarter than me. They got a PhD, 3 or 4 PhDs, and all kinds of stuff. So they've got to have dealt with all the issues. And therefore, what am I? I'm just a novice. Comes to mental power here. So I got to believe somebody. I believe somebody with a PhD or more behind their name. Well, that's a pretty flimsy thing as well, because the issue is not brain power necessarily. There may be some aspect of brain power that is valuable, but that's not the primary issue here. You can have 2 genius-level brain power with the exact same education, the exact same skills and abilities, looking at the exact same text from the exact same Bible, and come up with 2 different interpretations. How does that happen? Could happen because of methodology. One very brilliant person utilizes a methodology that takes, let's say, 10 things into account. Another one utilizes a methodology that takes 4 things into account. The one with 10 things may be looking and seeing more data than the one with 4 things. Right? See what I'm saying? And so it doesn't make any difference about this whole business of how many degrees they have behind their name. And a lot of times the issue is methodology. And that's one of the problems I have personally with a lot of these books, even one of them that I'm having to read, which I think is pretty good, the Duval, okay? But I still have a problem with him, and those others, I believe their methodology is incomplete. Okay? It's not exhaustive methodology. And therefore, it's not as good as it could be, potentially. Okay, I'm not saying it'll lead people astray or anything. I'm just saying it may not. There may be situations when not applying certain key elements, such as rhetorical issues, where they just will not be able to come to solid interpretations of a passage because they haven't included that in their repertoire of things to do or to look at and think about. Okay, or in that one problem that I keep mentioning, how many times when you have to select which words are important to study, do you study the word that's out there? Right? Which may be a key to the passage. An arthur's construction of the noun. You see? How many times does that happen? Well, it doesn't. How many times do they do Kai and say, yeah, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread in this passage? Yeah. But they never look at Kai, So anyway, that's just... Those are fallacies. The bottom line is commentaries are good. They can be very helpful. They're often very helpful. And sometimes they're very frustrating. Because when you're really doing your own work and you really come into a sticky wicket, a real problem there, man, somebody help me. You got this guy on TV, he's got this big house and he drives this big tractor and I'm a member of the golf club and everything and I got, this pool, wonderful thing. And how do I do this? Well, I'm in trouble dead up to my eyeball. Yeah. Will somebody help me? How does that relate to anything? No. What it relates in the sense when you really need help sometimes, these guys they're just not home. Okay? Really. And there's a number of reasons why they're not home. Sometimes they're not home because they haven't been able to solve the problem themselves and they just ignore it. And they just, a lot of times, they'll just theologize it away. Put it in a theological context and not deal with hard data, Other times it's an issue that has to do, and this sounds cruel, but I think it's true in some instances, that it's a watershed issue that could turn some people away from buying the guy's commentary because it doesn't agree with a particular theological perspective, you see? And therefore, let's just ignore this thing about baptism or whatever else, you see? Let's just kind of theologize it away here and not deal with it, okay? So that happens on occasion. That's like Bibles sometimes. They translate Bibles, but are they going to be real radical? How many Bibles have we read where it talked about, and Jesus Christ was immersed? When did that word immerse ever occur in a translation? You see? Who's going to buy it? Well, Baptists. That's who's going to buy it. Baptists, in fact, that's all who's going to buy it. You're not going to make a big bucks on that one, Zonovan. I'm sorry, that ain't going to happen, you see. And that's what happened with the old King James. They were arguing that whole issue when the King James was being translated. What are we going to do? And they'd say immerse. Well, let's just transliterate the word and let it go at that. And so forever, we've been living in a transliterated world here, Okay? So, sometimes when you really need them, they're not home. That's a frustration there. There's different kinds of commentaries, and I mention these because here's the key from my perspective. Before you go to a commentary, know what it is you're looking for. Okay? Kind of define the problem first. Don't just go to a commentary and kind of search through all these books to see what everybody says about it. Know what you're looking for. And then you can save an awful lot of time. Okay? So if I'm looking for a problem that has to do with, let's say, the historical background or something, you see. Number one, on these kind of commentaries, most of the time I'm not going to mess with a devotional commentary or homiletics commentary or a theological commentary. I'm going to either go to a historical or a critical commentary. I want one of those. Right? If I'm looking for some social dimension, let's say some issue of ancient social lifestyle or issues that relate to history particularly. Frankly, the kind of commentary I'm looking for? I'm looking for a theological liberal. Okay? Because they're not really trying to push a particular theological agenda. Those who are doing that most of the time are us conservatives. We ignore historical, some jump over the historical to get to the theology, and they kind of can ignore that theology a lot of times, but they're really good on the history side. Okay? I mean, they really dig into history. That's where their shining light is. So I'm looking for that kind of commentary. Or if I say let's say the problem of a post in here. Well, I'm not going to go to a devotional commentary. He's not going to talk about it, okay? And I'm not going to talk about, I probably won't go to a theological. I'm going to probably go to a critical commentary. That's got to do with a very technical aspect of the text. And I can run through a dozen of those things to see if they're going to help me. I just look up the verse, look up, are they talking about it? No, throw them away, try another one, You see, that's how it works. All these commentaries, including the devotional, have value for us. Okay? Critical commentaries we probably use most of the time because that's where we're at. I mean, we got problems here, and we're trying to solve these technical problems of the language and whatnot. Historical commentaries, they're pretty good in telling us, in keeping us within the framework of the history of the church down through the ages, I mean, it's not to say that there can't be some new thought that came along, okay? But generally speaking, we don't want to be so far removed from how the church for 2,000 years has been thinking through the Bible to say, oh, gee, they missed it for 2,000 years. And this is, maybe there's something like that for 2,000 years they never discussed, But the bottom line is at least we know what they've been thinking about. And maybe our theory falls in line, and maybe it doesn't fall in line. That's not to say you have to throw your theory out, but you need to do a lot of validation if nobody in the Christian world has ever thought of it before. You have to wonder, okay? So they can be helpful. Theological commentaries, sometimes the issue is like this. We were talking about that problem in let's say take the salvation issue. If you weren't real familiar with the varying uses of salvation and whatnot, you're fuzzy upon Paul's thing or something. Well, usually if you go to a theological commentary that really focuses on the theological dimensions of things, it'll help you at that point. In other words, it'll give you those kind of insights that you may need for that. Okay. Take the book of Revelation. I'm teaching that in my small group at church nowadays. If some reason they wanted to do that, fine. I'll never go to John Walberg, even though he's done a major work on Revelation. I'll never go to John Walberg for any technical data of the text. I'm going to go to John Walberg to see how he can keep my theological thinking cap on while I'm working through the other details of the text. You see, not that I agree everything with him theologically either, okay? But at least he gives me a theological context within which to think through my issues, okay? So a lot of times we need that, okay? Or homiletical commentaries, you're ready to preach and everything, and you got so many details in your head. I mean, you've been through you're looking at every bug on every tree throughout this whole text, you see, and you're just so stuck into the details. It's just hard. How am I going to put this thing together? How does this thing pick up a homiletical commentary just to see? Not that you're going to steal his work, of course. No, you never do that, Cyrus. No. But what you want to do is see, well, how do they handle it? I mean, have they seen a breakdown of this that really I can take some of my data and learning of this passage and kind of focus it into some communication direction, that will help. And a lot of times they can be very helpful. Okay. Devotional commentaries can be really helpful as well for the same kind of a reason. Sometimes you go, gee, this is a great text. I have no clue how it applies to the real world. How do you apply it to people out there for Sunday? I mean, my goodness. Well, sometimes a devotional commentary who doesn't have a clue about the details of the text a lot of times, and many times they wouldn't even have a good maybe a good interpretation of the text, okay? But sometimes they can put it in a practical context wherein you can say, where something can click and you say, I can see where this passage can fit that kind of a scenario out there. Okay? To give you a direction to think, get you above the trees and get up in the stratosphere and see the big picture. So sometimes that can work. I even got an illustration of that on page 90 there about Philippians 2, 1-2, a devotional commentary there, Stuart Briscoe. And he makes some interesting statements there about the concept of fellowship. And that could give me a direction to go in application of a passage. You see? Well, at any rate, so they can be helpful too. Now, most of the, when you're thinking about buying commentaries, usually the biggest problem that we have is at the critical level. Okay? It's usually the biggest problem, initially at any rate. And so you're probably going to buy critical commentaries, in other words, that deal with the details of the text, okay, to help you there, okay? And then probably maybe theological oriented commentaries will be the next level of concentration on a given passage, perhaps, okay? But you can spend all kinds of money on commentaries and have a wonderful library and not really benefit that much from it all. Okay? So you just got to be careful. The question I think is do you want to be a person who comes to your own interpretations and uses commentaries to either supplement or validate or invalidate your conclusions? Or do you want to be a person who asks the question, tell me what I believe. Read the book to see what I believe. No, I don't think you want to be there, okay? But that's the approach some people frankly take. They get ready to work through a passage, so the first thing they do is they have 5 commentaries, just read them all. Okay, I like this guy, he says it nice here. It says, and they don't do a lick of thinking on their own sometimes, At least that it sounds like it from listening to someone preach sometimes. But you have to ask your question, what do I want to use them for? What are they going to do for me? They're going to do it for me, or are they going to help me do it for me? You see, that's the approach I think we need to take, personally. Okay. I don't have a whole lot of commentaries, but I do have a significant number. And of course, I've been in schools for years where I can borrow the schools' libraries to save a lot of money. That's always nice. But I would say, test yourself. If you're more interested in buying commentaries than buying yourself a Bullinger or a lexicon or a concordance, you haven't learned a thing in this course. This course is designed for you to become exegetes on your own right, and you need to have the basic tools to do that. And the commentary becomes supplemental, not the primary. Okay? And so that would be one thing I would say. Okay. Any questions on commentaries? Oh, one thing I want to mention that I listed in the bibliography. I do a lot of this. I collect these kind of things as well. For instance, Roskoff and Carson, even Banker, that would be pretty good. But books on books. I get very often people call me or asking me in church or other contexts, even over the internet sometimes, well, we're about to do a study in Romans. What commentary do you recommend? You know what I'm saying? The books like this survey, New Testament commentary, and I've got, probably got a bookshelf, probably that many of these kind of books, which give you the books and then give you a little summary as to the direction they take and what the value of the books are, you know what I mean? And so I can pull those off the shelf and I can review them briefly and really give them an answer to that. So I like those kinds of books, and they're very valuable books. Okay, for me too. I mean, I say, let's say I'm going to teach James or something, saying, well, in a seminary or something, so, well, I need a textbook. What textbook do I want to use? You see, I'll pull it off the shelf. He's got one. You got a textbook?
No, I was going to ask the question.
You're going to say Zodiac, right? No. Forget it. No.
I was going to ask the question. My question is this, that both Carson and Roskopf are 13 years old.
Yeah, they're older, yeah.
So
right.
is there any place, even on the web, where something like this is updated?
Yeah, I've got more updated ones. I haven't updated this recently, apparently. Not on that part, but yeah, I've got more updated.
Because with all the new commentaries coming out.
Yeah, in the ETS, for instance, the Journal of the Evangelical Theological Society, they'll have book reviews and they'll do commentaries and stuff. You see, well, I don't want to tear them off and put them in my book, but that's where they're there. So I very often then I could go back and research on the fourth volume every year. The fourth volume has the index stuff. Go back and you can see where the stuff are, and then you can read back on see what kind of a book that is and what kind of value it may have for you. You see. So those are there. Kind of things there. It's a good question, though. But they periodically come out. I've got some Tremper Longman. Of course, that's Old Testament. I've been dealing with a number of those recently. He's come out with a couple of them anyway, on Old Testament, Tremper Longman the third. They're pretty recent. And I'm trying to think of the most recent New Testament one I have off the shelf. Can't think of it right off. But the most recent one would be some more recent than this. Okay. But actually, Carson is not too far off. 93 is 18. That's 13 years ago. When you start to think of good commentary works, solid stuff that comes out, they don't come out every year because people are taking time to write those things. I mean, take Ephesians by Harold Horner, book on Ephesians. It's, not only is it that thick, but he was working on that thing for about 15 years. We kept asking him, when are you going to get this book out? Finally, he got it out, and it's very worthwhile. Or you take Darrell Bach and his book on Luke, 2 volumes on Luke, both of them about the size of this, massive tomes, That's not going to come out every year, That's kind of once a decade kind of a book that comes out. So that one's not really that far off. Okay? A lot of the things that come out every year are pretty useless, frankly. There's not a whole lot of thought that goes into it. Or, here's the bigger problem, and you can see this all the time. It's just a compilation of everybody else's thinking from the past. I got a couple of books, I can just see it. I got a book on Philippians a guy wrote, so I put that there and I look at that. And then as I'm reading through the book, I can see there are about 5, in this particular book, there are about 5 constant references to other older commentaries. And I can just see his methodology. He's sitting at his typewriter, and he's got these 5 books laid out there, and he's picking and choosing as he moves through. And he gets his book done in 20 minutes, and, he sells it to Zondervan or somebody, and they think it's a really new deal because it's dated 2000 or something. I say, that thing was dated. If you really look at it, it was dated back in the 1920s, That's when the real thinking was happening, and he just brought it up to date. He didn't give credit where credit was due either on some of these. But at any rate, that's how it works sometimes. One of the things, I might mention this, and we're working on my dissertation, One of the, I used to obviously go to primary sources for original thinking issues, interpretation of stuff, passages and whatnot. So I would go to these new ones and look at the old ones and see all the new ones just reference the old ones. So his thought was just a stolen thought, so I moved back. And so I've got all of these a lot of these older reference words in my bibliography or in my footnotes. And so one of the writers, or one of my readers, came back and said, "She's got an awful lot of older works here. You don't have much of the new ones here, you see." And I say, well, that's because my conviction of intellectual honesty
That wasn't his thought. That was that older guy's thought that he just adopted and put it in a new book, you know. And they were giving me a hard time, so I said, okay, I'll be glad to put some of those in. So I added some of those newer works to the footnotes, not as the primary footnote reference. The secondary ones, because the reality is, they were just adopting somebody else's thinking. They weren't coming up with new original thoughts, you see. And that's not honest, in a sense, to say that's his original thought, when that was original thought occurred back in 1930, you know. You see? So, anyway, I want to talk about, well, let's see, did we say any more questions on commentary issues? Okay. I want to talk about final steps here. You were hoping there would be an end to this.